We are an episode 9 of the Content Lab podcast. We're joined by Sammy Moniz.
Welcome to my home.
Thank you for being on the show. This was like a super last second thing.
I know.
I'm super excited to have in the show.
This is great. I mean, we were talking about this in the car the other night, and I've listened to the one that you had Eric on. I told you I listened to the Healers episode, and it's super cool that you were just kind of like, hey, this is something I'm interested in, and I want to talk to other people that are interested in what I'm interested in. So super cool.
Honestly, it meant a lot whenever you told me that you were listening to my podcast, because I mean, it's kind of like I'm trying to reach content creators, and it's good to see, like, even though you are part of like the content creator community, but having people from like outside also, like being involved and listening to the show, it's really awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see if we have somebody. There you go. We have people watching.
Awesome.
It's the first time we do it this way, having like one setup, so we're adapting still. So Sammy, first of all, congratulations on the book.
Thank you. Very
Super exciting. Yeah. I had one friend from Pensacola, the one that I told you, Brittany. She was telling me about the book. She was super excited. So tell me about the book.
Oh my gosh. I am super lucky to have had the opportunity to write the book. I definitely did it a little differently than most people. I think a lot of people that are interested in food blogging or writing cookbooks, right? Like that's kind of the goal, is I want to build a following. I want to, grow my business, and I want to validate that with writing a cookbook. I kind of did everything like the exact opposite. I just started posting on Instagram and genuinely just started doing it for my own outlet. I've always been a creative person, and I really enjoyed cooking. I loved everything about it. I loved the process. I loved the learning. And when I started feeding the Frasers, it was just because I was cooking for Matt all the time. And he would say, like, I'd be like, what do you want for dinner tonight? And he'd go, oh, can you make that chili you made a couple months ago? And I'd go, sure. Like, I don't know what I did. I just kind of a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so I didn't know how to make things consistently. I just knew how to make stuff. So I just wanted to get better at cooking. And I used the Instagram essentially as a way to just like help myself learn how to cook. I followed, the photos kind of showed me the progress, and I wrote down the recipes and things that I changed. So that way when Matt said, hey, I really want that chili again, I had almost like my own little menu board of like, oh, okay, these are all the ingredients I use, and this is the recipe. And then it kind of just grew from there. So I had a food blogger reach out to me and just say, hey, love what you do. I'm a big CrossFit fan. I do food blogging, and I think that you have a lot of potential to like monetize what you're building here. I had a really great following on Instagram, but I didn't have a website. I didn't have like anything. So then I built a website, and then I built a blog, and then I wrote a cookbook. And I just kind of got the opportunity. I'd worked with a publisher when I was doing athlete management, and that publisher worked on Katrin's book. And I got to know them really well throughout the process of writing her book. And they were the ones that approached me and just said, we would love to publish a cookbook for you if you have any interest. And I was just kind of like, you want me to write a cookbook? Like, I just have this Instagram page, I didn't really think that was something that I earned or deserved in a way, And so, writing the cookbook I was super excited for the opportunity, but I also had no clue what it meant to write a cookbook and how to do it and how to photograph for it and all of these things. So it was such a cool learning experience, and it's amazing to see people have it and like post it and redo the recipes themselves. It's super cool.
Yeah, I feel like of course, I followed Matt for a while, so I kind of remember when the Fit in the Frasers got started years ago, and I remember just being kind of like for fun, just like posting nice pictures. So it's awesome to see the growth of it. I remember the first time that I saw that you were publishing the book, I was like, it grew to the point that, you were releasing a book, and I went back to the Instagram account, like a lot of people following, a lot of people like the content.
Yeah.
And something that was super impressive too is the quality of the content, like the photos that are on the Instagram account. And you told me today that's all you, which is impressive. I thought it was either Eric or Alex just working their magic.
Those guys are pretty amazing, but when it comes to the food,
you're the
don't
pro.
Touch my food.
Yeah, no, they're really good. Like I was telling Alex, the composition, the colors, everything, it just looks really good.
Thank you.
And so how
It wasn't always like that.
yeah, how did you get started with taking pictures of food? Did you start with the phone and then kind of like
Yeah,
evolved
I
into
actually didn't start on my iPhone. Matt had bought me a Canon as a gift when we first started dating. We were traveling a ton, and that was really, I mean, like iPhones were a thing. Don't get me wrong, we're not like ancient, but I don't know, the cameras on an iPhone just weren't the best. Now they're pretty amazing, but so he bought me a camera, and it kind of just sat. It's not something that we ended up traveling with, and so it sat there. And I think when I got interested in kind of photographing my journey of cooking, I had no interest in being a photographer. I had an interest in cooking. I wanted to learn how to cook. I loved everything about cooking, and then it was like, oh, turns out if you want to show off the food that you're cooking, you also have to learn how to photograph, or you have to hire out for that. And at the time I was like, I'm not hiring someone. I'm going to pay somebody to run a hobby page, you know? So I had this whole setup. It's actually really funny. On our dining room table, there was a tripod with like a horizontal bar, and a camera hung off that. And I had like weights on the end to like counterbalance it. I had like a trigger button that I could press, and I had the stool. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but it was like the stool and the rug, and like I put the plate on the stool, and it was
just getting creative to get the
it was genuinely the plate that then went and sat in front of Matt, and that's what he would eat. So it was actually like, there were so many times where he was like,
hurry up,
eat now. And I'm like, I just need to get the shot. So I'd kind of like position myself, and I'd like click the button, and I'd quick look over and make sure that I got it. And yeah, it was just like a fun, I don't know, I had no interest in the actual detail of the food. For me, it was just like, what are the ingredients and what are the steps? Sure. And so when it came to writing the cookbook, I was like, okay, well, the only way that people are going to follow, say a recipe has 17 steps, for somebody who's getting into cooking, like, that's intimidating. It's a lot to do. But if the photo just makes you salivate and makes you just like, I will do anything for that bite of food, then you're willing to go through all the steps, you know? And so it was like, okay, I've got to up my photography game. And it was really in writing the cookbook and photographing the cookbook that I like learn how to photograph food and found my style and my editing and all that stuff. I mean, I still know like bare basics. It gets me
but you're
by.
Good at it.
But yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well, you said it's so true. If you see like so many steps to cook something, I'm like, first of all, I'm really bad at cooking and I don't enjoy it as much. So just having like 17 steps, it's automatically, I'm out.
Yeah.
But if I see like I follow some recipes and it's because the picture looks so good that I'm like, okay, I have to get
it's
this.
Inviting. It's exactly what it is. It's supposed to like,
correct.
It's like, it evokes this like emotional response, and we're like, oh my God, I have to have that.
Yeah. And as I was mentioning, even though I'm not into like cooking, I remember it being super interesting to me to see what Matt was eating, because he's one of those athletes that really didn't share much about, his training or anything like that. So just having like, hey, this is what
a little insight.
Yeah. At that point, he won what 1-2 times maybe when you started. So this is what the champion of the CrossFit Games is eating every day. So for me at that point, I was like, working out a lot more, trying to compete, like locally compete. It was very interesting to like see what he was eating, and
that's cool.
And I remember like friends talking about it, like, hey, look what Matt's eating, and it was just very interesting.
It's funny you say that. Like, that reminds me of, so you saying, oh, it's really cool to hear that, like me, that I'm watching your podcast or like listening. And it's the exact same feeling. Like, I remember people being, tagging on Instagram, being like, yo, check out what Matt Fraser's eating. And then I remember, like, at some point it kind of tipped, and people would be like, yo, you got to check out this food page. And I was like, I'm a food page all of a sudden. Like, I'm not just what Matt Fraser's eating, which, I mean, obviously that's why I created it, because I had a very hungry person to feed and an interest in cooking and learning how to cook. So it just kind of like served two purposes. But it was the cool transition of like, oh, these are people outside of our little CrossFit circle that are also interested in what I'm doing, and that felt really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is that Matt mentioned a lot. He mentioned that He talked a lot about eating and about food, and that's kind of like a question that it's very often, if you know, in an interview, like, how's your diet? And Matt will often say, I just eat what Sammy cooks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what she's doing. She just puts the plate. It's delicious, and I eat it, and I'm performing well. So that's something that, people like. Okay,
Yeah.
this is the secret. This
The
might be the
secret
secret.
sauce. Yeah.
He won 5 times. Everybody else trains. It might be
It might be the food.
it might be the
It might be
yeah.
the food. It might be a little bit of his hard work though, but it might be the food.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely playing for a role. And he mentioned all the time that it was like a teamwork.
Yeah.
He always gave you credit for like
Yeah. He's
you
such
know
a sweetheart.
yeah. And that's something that was really cool to see. I mean, I pretty much started CrossFit when Matt started like winning. So it's kind of like I just saw from day one like his evolution into just winning 5 times. So even though we met at Waterpalooza not that long ago, I've known about you for many years.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for following.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the process of writing a book. That's something that really interests me because, again, like I've been thinking about new ideas. So I created the podcast, and I was thinking always like right now I'm not at a point that I want to write a book, but it came in my mind like what would it be to write a book? Like how do you even get started? Like do you
Yeah.
sit down and write a couple of words? Like who do you approach? So tell me the process for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that a publisher reached out to you first.
Yeah, I think most traditionally, a lot of people will take either a concept or, regardless of what kind of book it is, typically you like write a couple chapters and then you have this whole concept of like, this is what it's going to be about. And here's just like a sample. And then you go and kind of pitch that out to publishers. Of course, if you self-publish, it's a whole other thing. But, I had a very fortunate opportunity to just sign a contract. And I signed a contract in December of 2019. And they were like, cool, send us a manuscript and some photos on January 1st, 2021. I was like, that's it? You don't need to see you don't need to like check in every 3 months. And they were like, no, just send it to us when we're done. So I was like, okay. And it really was. It's like, where do you even start? Where I started was I started writing lists of recipe ideas, and then I would look at that list for a while, and then I would take a recipe and start writing lists of ingredients, and then you take those ingredients and you write kind of like what your thoughts are on the steps, like what do you have to do first. And I wrote a handful of it. I mean, there were probably 3 or 4 months where all I did was write. I would spend the mornings writing, and then I would spend the afternoons just kind of like fussing in the kitchen and testing some stuff. This at the time was my full-time job. So I was doing Feeding the Frasers full-time. I wasn't managing athletes anymore. It was like the perfect timing for everything. And so, yeah, I mean, for 3 or 4 months, it was like, 7 in the morning till 10 in the morning, just 3 solid hours of just like getting ideas out. And then would spend the afternoons kind of like testing those ideas. From there, you really you test a concept recipe, and then you figure out along the way, okay, not this much seasoning, or it's going to take about 15 minutes to cook this, and then so you write those ideas, write those steps down, and then you like really flush it out. Every recipe I tested probably like 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
And then you cook it to photograph it, and then you probably cook it one more time to photograph it again. So yeah, there was a lot of learning along the way. I mean, that's my learning now that it's done. While
Absolutely.
I was in it, I was really like, there were a couple times where I'm like, who the hell am I, right, to be writing a cookbook, right? But I have so many cool learnings from it. Like, for instance, this is how it's supposed to be. I'm not necessarily sure this is how everyone does it, but I learned that the way in which a recipe is written, like the order of the ingredients in the list, is the order in which you use them. Okay. So you would normally, like in my mind, when I first started doing this, I'd be like, let's say bacon wrapped goat cheese stuffed chicken. As I think that out, I'm like, okay, that's the title of the recipe. That gives you the concept, and you're like, okay, bacon, goat cheese, chicken, salt, pepper, spices, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's actually like, well, what's the first step there? The first step is like, you're probably gonna pat the chicken dry, season it with salt and pepper, stuff it with the goat cheese, wrap it in the bacon. So really it's like salt, pepper, chicken, goat cheese, bacon, in that order.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
like it takes you through the steps. So
Interesting.
little things like that I just
Yeah.
had no idea. And I mean, this is years into doing Feeding the Frasers that I had consulted a couple people who have worked on cookbooks, and I was just like,
Just learning so much.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's whenever you're talking about that, it kind of feels similar to experiences that I do. You know, like stuff that I do. Obviously, whenever you're new at something, you reach out to people who've done it before. I'm talking to my mind. I'm thinking of whenever I start photography, just reaching out to people that I know. And you
Mhm.
said like, who am I to like be doing this? Like that's kind of how I feel sometimes with the podcast, like episode 1 or 2. It's something kind of uncomfortable, you
Mhm.
know. But it's like I have goals, you know. I have goals in my mind, and I know it's something that I gotta keep doing. And I mean, even though it's only 9 episodes in, I've gotten a couple of cool messages. People like tell me that it's helped them a lot to hear from photographers like Carly or Bennett or
Mhm.
Scott, even Eric. A lot of people like reaching out that they like the episode. So it's really cool to hear that. Even though in my mind I'm like, nobody's gonna listen to this.
Right.
Who's gonna listen to my podcast? If they listen, it's because you know Eric was there.
Yeah.
But those messages kind of like keep me going. And you showed me something today that it's one of the best things I've heard.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. If you can explain like
Yeah.
what it is.
So it's this quote from Ira Glass. He's a writer, and he's talking about the creative process, and it's specific to writing, right? Like his references.
But it applies to everything.
It applies to everything, especially in the creative world of like. And a friend shared this with me too. Like I was going through this phase of like doubt and worry that the cookbook wasn't going to be good enough, and I felt like I outgrew it, or you know, you look back and you're like, oh, I'm trying to do this new thing, and something just doesn't feel right. Like you know, you're only 9 episodes in, and you're saying it's good, and I'm having fun, but like it's just not where I want it to be. Right. And what he talks about in this is like you got into this because you have really good taste. So anybody in the creative world, it's like, well, you're creative and you have killer taste. You have this like eye for something, but your skill isn't there yet. Like your skill doesn't match your taste. So there's this gap where you're looking at the thing that you've created and you're kind of like, I don't like it, but I know that I have potential, and I know that.
Correct.
And so what he basically says is like a lot of people at that point of friction where there's the gap in your skill and your taste, a lot of people just stop and they quit. And he's saying if you keep pushing through and you just put in a volume of work, like the gap will close and finally your skill will match the taste that you have. But it's only through the volume of work. And so that to me, it's like I listen to that at just like the best time, because genuinely when I'll pull up an old photo and show you like when I started photographing the cookbook, like this was the photo, and then like this was the last photo that I took for the book, and you can just see the difference. But there's 100+ recipes in the cookbook, and I did all of the photos twice. So it's like I did a very huge volume of work to get to the point where it's like, finally my taste and like what I want it to look like matches the actual abilities that I have to like take the photos and you know, be comfortable with what I've produced.
Absolutely. And I feel like it applies in every industry, because I remember when I started photography and video, I used to look up to people like Preston Smith and Jonathan Mayfield, and I remember seeing their stuff and being like mind blown. And here I am taking pictures of my gym, and some of my friends are like, "Oh, dude, you're gonna be like, you know, be like Preston one day." And in my mind, I'm like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
There's no way my work is like." I will see my pictures. I go back sometimes and I look at my first couple of pictures. I never deleted them. I archived them on my Instagram so I can see them. And it's
but just so the honeys can't scroll all the way back.
Exactly, they cannot scroll and see it. And I see it, I'm like, wow, like I'm glad that I never quit, even though I knew that my work wasn't good enough to, you know, to be at the CrossFit Games level, like photographing CrossFit athletes. But I just kept on going. I had, you know, like big dreams, like one day just being here, it's kind of like a dream for me, you know, like just visiting Cookville, visiting Vermont. It's like, it's mind blowing. I was telling Alex yesterday that usually the day after I do like a very exciting project is when it hits me. Like the first time I worked with Daniel and Bailey and Brooke Ends, when I was on set, I was focused, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like, it was exciting, but it was like fine. But the day after, when I sat down, I'm like, oh my god, like these are people that
Can't
I've
believe they're
been,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I've been, following for so many years, and I just worked with. I did some videos for them, and same thing with Matt yesterday. I'm like, I'm at HWPO. I'm with Matt Fraser and Sammy. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
And
Well, we love having you here. This
thank
is
you.
great.
And yeah, it's like he was saying, it's just not quitting. Just kind of like,
Yeah.
you have big dreams, just keep going. And hopefully the podcast will be something like that.
Yeah.
Just having Eric, you, Heber, people like that. I'm just like, we're 9 episodes in, and I've had 9 people that I really look up to. So it's
Also,
awesome.
think how cool it is, like in a circle like this. When I was working on the cookbook, I reached out to Heber multiple times and was
That's
like,
awesome.
Heber, what setting do I put my camera on? Like, okay, so I remember sending him. I got a thing from the publisher on like, I'm only producing photos to go up on Instagram.
Mhm.
Like, at that point, I didn't even know the difference between like, how do I export and like, what's the setting gotta be for
Yeah.
Instagram versus web versus print, And I was like, I just want to make sure that I'm taking the photo properly. So
Is that my phone?
It might be the heat.
It's a hit.
Yeah, it might be the heat.
I thought it was the phone.
The heat might have kicked on. Do you want me to turn it off?
However you want to. If anybody has any questions,
Yeah, sure.
you can ask me. If you have any questions for Sammy, and I have the phone right here, so you can just let me know.
Might just take a second.
Oh, you're good. Perfect.
I'll shut off so it's not humming, but
Sorry to interrupt you.
no, it's
Alex
okay.
was like doing signs.
Oh, it's okay.
So you were reaching out to Heber, like asking questions.
Yeah, and I mean, the publisher had sent basically a document saying, okay, here's what you got to do for like the sizing for photos for print and all these things. And I was just like, this is a second language to me. I had no idea what it meant. And I was like, can you look at this sheet and just make sure that like the camera settings are going to allow me to export the photos so that they're, that I'm not like handing over blurry photos once they get, expanded for print and all that stuff. And so the cool thing about, I feel like the circle that we're in is that if you have a question about anything, right? Like now you have a Rolodex of people that you've met at events or, like somebody knows somebody. We're very close with Preston Smith and Jonathan. Like we've spent a lot of time with them. Back before they were big, they were big.
Yeah,
don't forget about us.
Those were the two main people I looked up to because they used to go to a local competition in Pensacola. Mm-hmm. So those were like my introduction to like the world, specifically in like CrossFit when it comes to content creation.
And so it's like, oh, you want to talk to Preston? I'm sure we could introduce you. It's one of those things like somebody in our circle knows somebody. And so that's what I love so much about it is like everybody's, when I messaged Heber, he wasn't like, oh, listen, I don't have time for you. He was like, oh, cool. Why don't you call me and like, I'll walk you through, like, show me the screen, show me the settings on the camera and I'll like make sure that you're good. So that's the cool thing about it too, is I feel like people are so excited to share their passion. If you had a question about podcasting, right? I'm sure there's somebody in the space that you're like, oh, I listen to your podcast all the time. Tommy Marquez, let's say, or Sean Woodland. And you're like, what do you guys do for your audio or for your, and I'm sure people would be happy to share, which is so cool.
It was super exciting to just start the podcast and having somebody like Eric. I literally told him, I'm like, Eric, I would love to have you one of the first guests. It was after Scott's episode, so he was the second one. And he's like, sure, I'm in Vermont right now. How can we make this work? Like, can we do it tomorrow night? Mm-hmm. It was kind of like, he was like excited about it. I'm like, oh, wait a second. Okay, he's excited. Okay, that's a good thing. And then I did the episode with him. Episode 3 was Richard Bloomer. And then episode 4, so before that, I reached out to Heber. I'm like, hey, dude, I just, started this project. I've talked to Heber before, like, it's not like we're friends, but I've talked to him and kind of with DM back and forth a couple of times. But obviously I wasn't expecting like, sure, I was just maybe
if you could squeeze me in, that'd be cool.
Maybe I was expecting, like next month I might be available on Saturday at 6 a.m. And
he's like, I'm free this afternoon.
His response was, done. I'm down.
Yeah.
Next Monday works. I'm in Hawaii. I'll fly in the same morning. I'm like, wow, that's
so
crazy.
cool.
He literally flew in. He's from Salt Lake City, right?
Mhm.
So he got there that morning, and like an hour or two after, he was sitting down on the episode.
That's awesome.
So it's like that kind of support. It's like what keeps me like. It's really awesome. We have some questions here.
Ooh, yay.
So, oh, somebody just said that they're getting feedback on the sound because of the.
Oh, because of the heat. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully that is updated now.
Perfect. Yeah, we don't have any questions at all, but we have people watching. That's awesome.
Super cool.
And something that you told me today that I didn't know is that you manage HWPO's Instagram and Fit in the Fraser. So it's all you, which is super impressive because it's really good. And I thought it was Eric or Alex like helping, or even somebody else like outsourcing somebody, because it's a lot. I feel like you have to be on top of things. Like I know other, like Carly, she manages Proven. I know the person who manages Mayhem, and it's just I know how much they have to work, and knowing that you are doing that, and also fitting the Frasers and the book is just super impressive. How do you manage time to do all those things, and also being a wife?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely a lot. I mean, it's just I don't know any other way. I think we're at a point now. Like, I also have a great team, so it's like, yeah, am I posting the feed thing? Building the strategy behind things, or understanding our calendar. Okay, we're going to be at semifinals in a couple weeks. Like, what's some of the content? Or when we launched our app, it's like, okay, you've got to organize a lot of that stuff. But really, it then goes out to the team. So, Eric is helping build graphics for certain things. Hey, we want to add this type of messaging to post in the caption, but how can we apply some of that messaging to the actual imagery? Alex is helping with video stuff. So, I mean, I have a great team of people. I didn't always have that team. There's definitely a little bit of like, you got to lay the ground floor. But now it's so cool to have a team of people that help with it. And then of course the greater team, it's definitely not all us. It is cool because I feel like we have a really nice like collective voice. And I do feel really good that I get to be, I guess like a leader in that, and making sure that people understand what our ethos is, and that, we're about hard work. And I guess it feels cool to lead by example in that, not just say that, oh, we just work really hard. It's like, no, I want people to see that I actually do work hard, not just say, oh, we're a bunch of hard workers over here. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I mean, the name says that hard work pays off, right? And talking about Alex and Eric, you said you started pretty much everything by yourself. Now you have two content creators, two of the best in the industry. I've met Eric at the games. That was the first time he shot with you guys, and I met Alex before he joined HWPO, and great dude. Like, I look up to his work too. How's that? Just having those two. I guess you kind of like talk about it, but how's having two of like how important it is to have having somebody doing photos or video for a growing brand like HWPO?
Yeah, I mean, I think we really lucked out in the sense that, like, not only are they great at their craft, but they just understand the brand, and they understand what is important to us, and they represent it themselves, which I think is super important. You can have somebody that takes a great photo, or anybody can do a task, right? Like, I can find anybody to take photos. I'm sure there's tons of people out there that take great photos, but I think it's super important to us as a company that people align with the brand, and that they're a roll up their sleeves and get to work kind of people. And I think that's super important, especially at the early stages. The people that we have a very small team, but it's super important to us that the culture within our team is laid immediately, so that way as people start to come on, and the team gets bigger, right? Like it's that classic, your vibe attracts your tribe. Like, those are the people that we want to work with, is people that love what they do and are super passionate about their thing, but also represent the brand and represent what it means to work hard. And so I think that's awesome. I mean, we definitely just like lucked out that both of them are amazing at what they do. And so, there's no having to teach the craft. And then they're also great representatives of the brand. And so, I don't have to teach them like, hey, I really need you guys to work hard today. They just show up and they do it. So yeah, we're super grateful. Like Eric has taken on an awesome role in terms of like design. He's really helped like bring a lot of design to the team. I mean, he's like helped refresh our brand guidelines and make sure that anything that goes out, like his eyes are on it to make sure that it aligns with the brand. Everything from like, can't believe how many conversations we've had about colors and fonts, and it's like it seems so silly, but that stuff matters at the end of the day.
It's super important, just the consistency of the brand.
Yeah.
And that's something I talked to Eric about on our episode. That I love how everything in the brand it's so like consistent and the colors are there. And I told him I think you're doing an excellent job just keeping something because obviously I see a picture, I know it's Eric because he has a very unique style. But also same with HWPO, you see it and it's like it's this beautiful image with the colors, like the warm colors, and it matches well the brand.
Yeah.
So and that's super important when we're talking about content creation and managing a brand, like like the brand image is just having consistency throughout the brand.
Absolutely.
And talking about Eric and Alex, something I think is really cool too that I've noticed is that you guys are like family. Like it's like Eric is like really good friends with Matt and with you, and you guys talk to each other like like homies. Is like it's a really cool relationship.
Half of our conversation earlier today was like just a little bit of bullshit and then work, and then a little bit of bullshit and a little bit of work.
And that's super important because for him it's probably whenever because he lives in Yuma, Arizona, right?
Yeah.
For him, probably coming here is just come visit family. It's not like, oh, I have to work.
Right.
For him, it's probably like, oh, I get to hang out with my friends and shoot some video, take some pictures, and do some fun. And I think that's super important when we're talking about working with a team, just having that connection with content creators. And I can also tell that you trust what they do a lot, and just having that creative freedom is so important.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, of course, but myself, Matt O'Keefe, Matt Fraser, like we know the brand, we speak the brand, but I also want to encourage the people that work for us to know the brand and speak the brand. It's like, if you can walk the walk and talk the talk, then like you're good at what you do. Like I've obviously, we've hired you for a reason, and I just want you to embody it the same way so that, I don't want to micromanage anybody. I want to say, let's build, like I have this idea. Can you help me bring it to life? And just know that somebody can say like, okay, I see like the basics of what you need from this idea. And I also have a super clear guideline as to what the brand look and feel and, the tone is.
Sure.
And now I can just go and create. It's been awesome. I mean, Eric has definitely been with us. He's been with us since the games and has helped a lot of like the building and some of the foundation.
And I can tell, like I've seen the evolution of the brand just.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And Alex, the first thing he did with us this year, or just in general, is Wadapalooza. Yeah, we've been in touch. I mean, since before the games, I've been talking to him for a while.
Oh, really? So Alex? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
We put something out of before the games, which is how we met Eric. Vakey came to. Love Vakey. Oh my gosh, you should
from
have
Australia,
him.
Right?
Yes.
Yes. So I talked to him not that long ago. So hopefully I'll have him on the show.
Awesome. Such a solid dude. So he came to the games with us. But I also, within that, like I posted something on Instagram saying, hey, we're looking for some people to come to the games. Here's the opportunity. And Alex was one of the people that I spoke to. And I think, he was working for Jacob and kind of doing some other things. And Vicky was just like a little bit more available at the time. And so that's why we ended up going with him. And I'm so grateful because we had such a great time and the content was amazing. And
the content was great.
It was so.
I remember following the whole thing, and then I was following him too. Whenever he had to go back to Australia, and he was like in a hotel for 2 weeks, and he was like just sharing his experiences. So that was pretty cool. We have a question if you want. So let me see. So Dalton, he asked, what is coming up next, and what that you're excited for with HWPO?
Oh my gosh, what's coming up next? Well, this will be the first year that we have athletes competing, like our actual HWPO athletes. So semifinals is coming up. And I think what's super cool is, yes, okay, we have some athletes in the space. Athletes are not the main core of our
Mhm.
business, right? Like our training business is definitely speaking to more like the you and I's in the CrossFit world than like the Mal's and Jason's. But
For sure.
I'm very excited to be able to rally around. We have about 80 athletes that are HWPO members
Oh,
that are
wow.
competing at semifinals this year. So it's like, I think it's just going to be such a cool opportunity for us to meet more of our members at semifinals and be able to support them and just, make those connections. It's honoring that they're following our programming and it's cool to see them succeed in this way and kind of make it through the various benchmarks. So I think that's like the next big thing, but that's the next big thing for a lot of people.
True. Always like HWPO it's kind of new. If we're talking about programming, it's new.
Sure.
But you guys started with really good athletes. You have Mal O'Brien that she was training here earlier, and I mean we're talking about. I always say like she has so much potential to win. Like Tia, she has potential to win many times. And you have Marconi, you have Hopper too, right?
Yep.
So I mean those are three of the best athletes in the world.
Yeah.
Was that something you guys were expecting whenever like first started like Matt, like okay I'm gonna start coaching? Who was the first athlete ever that he started coaching?
Jason.
Jason was the first one. Okay.
Yep. I mean, I'll let Matt, always speak for himself. I know that when he first started programming, we'll say just in general, he had no interest in, coaching athletes. For him, he was kind of like, listen, I've been on that side of things. Like, I'm good. I want to focus on, building a training platform. But I also
Eric mentioned that. I remember him mentioning that.
I also think like he just has so much knowledge to share.
For sure.
And we share so much of it with our members. But I think he really gets a lot out of being able to share it one-on-one. And as much as, like I'm sure people would be chomping at the bits for one-on-one coaching from that, that's obviously not scalable, right? Like we're doing our best to provide that very similar one-on-one featured experience with our daily coaching videos and the content within our app and on Circle and the resources and all of that stuff where they're getting a lot of access to Matt, whether it's through live calls or through curated content. But I think he also, like he's got Mal here every day and he gives a coaching cue and then watches her correct it and tells her, oh, I want you to pull at this stroke rate or I want you to hit these, numbers on your intervals, and then he sees it happen and he's just like, you can see him light up a little bit. So I think that's cool. I don't think he was expecting that.
For sure.
And so it's been cool to watch him coach. He just has so much knowledge to share, and then you can see that it really gets him excited to share it.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, obviously just being here a day and a half, but I can tell like him coaching is just Mal was bench pressing today and he was like, whoa, like crazy. And I mean, me too. It's just incredible to obviously I see it on the TV often, and I shoot some athletes. But being actually like yesterday that Mal and Jake were working out here, I was just watching in front, and it's crazy amount of pain that they go through, and like how they push on the bike, and it's really. I mean, for me as being like somebody that also enjoys the sport, it's really cool to see it.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Me neither.
This hurts. I'm gonna slow down a little bit. I wish I did. It's very impressive to watch.
Yeah, and Alex tells me it's like that every day. Like they push it, and I mean that's why they're
every day for hours.
Absolutely. So, talking about fitting the Frasers, now you have the first book out. It came out. You said in February this year.
February. Yep.
What's like moving forward? Obviously, the book is a big step, but I'm guessing you don't want to stop there. It's not like this it. I have a book. I have a cool Instagram page. What's next that if you can share with us?
Truthfully, what's next is getting back to feeding the Frasers a little bit. I've taken a little bit of a break just with, we launched our training app and the business itself is growing, and now we've got Alex and Eric on board and a full, we have like 7 employees now, which is super cool, but also just a far larger task than not than expected. I mean, it's definitely expected. It was just more like, okay, this is a little bit more priority. So I just haven't actually done much with it in the last couple months. So I think just getting back to it in some way. I would love to write another cookbook. But knowing what went into the first one and knowing what I would want to bring to the second one, I don't think that that's something that I'm not going to commit myself to. Right, I'm not going to commit myself to it unless I know that I can actually commit myself to it. So yeah, I think right now I'm dedicating myself to helping grow HWPO training, and I think Feeding the Frasers went from hobby to full-time business, and I think I need to just settle and be okay with it being a hobby for a little while, and just using it like the reason why I started was because it was just a fun outlet for me. And I think it got to a point where I was super excited to see it grow. But then your focus is different. Like then your focus is growing it, and it's now all of a sudden it's this business and this beast of its own that I'm excited to just like cook for fun and just like take photos again and not have the pressure of like, I've got to do 5 recipes a week and write all these blog posts. And so I'm just excited to like get back in the kitchen and cook a little.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I mean, you already have a book, so it's kind of like, it's time to focus on our
We'll ride the coattails of that book a little bit. Yeah, exactly.
And we already talked about time management. That's something I ask every guest, because I feel like I don't have, too many things in my life, like going on in my life. Like I have 2 dogs, and I struggle with time with my business. And then I see people like, for example, like Heber, he has 2 kids, right? 2 kids, a wife. He's doing Buttery Bros. He's producing movies. He's doing all these things. He's traveling often. And then he has time to sit down with me for an hour. And then I see you, like you have a husband, you have Finn Frasers, you have a book. You kind of like, you're the leader of the content creators and at HWPO. And my mind is just blown. I'm like, how do they have time to do all these things? And there's many people in the space that I really like. That's something that really interests me a lot. It's time management, because that's super easy to get it wrong. What's your advice for somebody that, imagine if I'm talking to you and I'm like, Sammy, I feel like I'm burnt out because I don't have time. What would you tell me? When it comes to time management, it can be planning or something.
I mean, I think you just got to find a process that works for you. So like I'm a list person, and obviously like schedules and routines, like setting just like some good healthy habits. What are your non-negotiables? So if it's time, that like where are you missing time in your day? If you're missing time for fitness, well then you need to prioritize your fitness. Or if you're missing time for creation or like free mental space for ideas, and you need to create that time. So it's like, we get up every morning at 5:30. I either work out in the morning or like I'll go for a walk. So like this morning, I went for a walk this morning because I had to be somewhere super early. So I was like, all right, well, I don't want to rush my workout, but I'll go for a walk. I'll start my morning. I'll get some work done. I have an appointment. It's just like you kind of have to just prioritize. Like fitness is a priority. So all of a sudden, like the day was getting shorter, and I ran down here and I did a workout before the podcast, because it was like, well, that's, you can't be a part of a training business and not train.
Absolutely.
And, you gotta like consume the content that you create to make sure that it's like quality check, quality control. That's what I call it. Like I have to work out because I have to test the workouts to make sure that they're good for the people.
Letting everybody know, Sammy was literally working out. Like she finished and we went straight into the episode. So
I cut it 3 minutes early so I wouldn't be gasping for air.
Very committed. Yes. That's great to hear. And and I really hope people like listen to that, because I know some of my friends are the same thing. They just struggle with time management. It's super important.
When I was writing the cookbook, imagine, like, it's just such a giant task. Like I said, I signed a contract and then I didn't have to deliver anything for 12 months. And so you're kind of like, how do I even start to prioritize or like build a timeline for myself? And once I had all my recipes written, I created a shoot schedule, which like most photographers, videographers, I had a shot list. I had the recipe that I was going to write. And then that way my days were organized
Yeah.
with like, okay, I know that tomorrow I'm shooting these 5 recipes, so I need to make sure that I have all the ingredients
Okay, interesting.
prepped. I need to, do I need to go to the store for anything today? So that way tomorrow, all I have to worry about is cooking and photographing. And then even things like I would have lists of like links to similar recipes or photo inspiration. So if it was like muffins, right? I had
Mhm.
like 4 different photos of muffins that I'd pull from Pinterest or something, like some on a cutting board, some in a basket, some here, so that I just, when I came time to photograph it, I just kind of had some inspiration of like, okay, I kind of like how this looks with them like in the basket with a towel
Yeah,
inside, and then it kind of helped me when I was ready to take the shot, just kind of prep it. So
absolutely.
I think when it comes to time management, like, for me, that was building out a shot list.
Right.
Some people might be able to show up to a shoot and just shoot,
Mhm.
but then, do you find that you show up to a shoot and just shoot and run out of time? Maybe you should prep
You
yourself a
should
little
probably,
bit,
yeah,
So I think it's just
absolutely.
finding the system that works for you.
That's interesting. I didn't think about also the time that you have to, for example, going to the store and all that, like just cooking. It's so much, just to the point that you're actually cooking. Like the
Yeah.
time to prepare before that, it takes a while.
I think for one recipe, like if you ever see myself or any other, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, not other food bloggers, but like one recipe post on Instagram is about 6 to 8 hours of work.
Oh wow,
So like writing the
that is
recipe,
incredible. Mhm.
testing the recipe potentially again, cooking the recipe, photographing, editing, writing the blog, posting on
Yeah,
social. It's like
and
six to
trying
eight
it too to
hours.
make sure it's good. You don't want to
Yeah,
put a recipe out there. You're
right.
like, ah, it's not very good.
Yeah.
Talking about the following, whenever we started the episode, we were talking about that. Most people started following Fit in the Frasers because they were interested to see what Matt was eating.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you have a book, have you experienced people from random, like not related to fitness or CrossFit or anything, just reaching out like, Sammy, I just found out about your book. This is
Yeah.
awesome. I love cooking, and they have no idea about Matt or CrossFit or anything. Is that something you've been experiencing?
Yeah. So I'm actually, I do, I'm a Traeger ambassador, so Traeger Grill, so I work with them, and it's kind of cool when I go. Everybody now knows who Matt is. I mean, and a lot of people know who Matt is before me, but it's almost like that's like my little cooking world, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm the celebrity
Yeah.
within the Traeger world, and they're like, oh my God, where's Matt? Oh, he's home doing his thing,
Yeah.
right? But it's funny because it's like, it's just such a different world. And I recently went to, they just launched a new grill. And so I went to the summit where they like did this whole show about the new grill. And it was really cool to have people that I'd met a couple years ago. Like, I feel like when I show up to that, it's very similar. Like, I don't really belong here. Y'all are a big
Mhm.
deal in the cooking world. And I'm just this like fun Instagram hobby page,
Yeah.
And Matt one day was like, like you wrote a cookbook, like you're kind of a big deal. I'm like,
Yeah.
really? You think so? Thank
Yeah.
you, So it was cool to be at that kind of event because oftentimes we are at CrossFit events, and I'm so appreciative of people that follow and are interested. But to be at like a cooking event and people come up to me and say, congratulations on your cookbook. I'm like,
That's
you
so cool.
saw that I have a cook, like you follow me, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It feels cool.
Yeah, I cannot. Well, I've experienced some of it with my videography business. Like some people reaching out to me, like, "Oh, I look up to your work," and it just feels so good because that was never like the goal at the beginning. I just wanted
Right.
to do it for fun and evolved into my full-time business, and I'm really glad that it did. And I feel like now sharing like some of the stuff that helped me whenever I got started. It's like it's so cool to be able to like just answer a DM somebody like asking me a question like, hey, I'm brand new at this. I've been following your stuff for a little bit. I love what you do. It's just like wow, like that's crazy.
Isn't that
And
awesome?
one of the people that follow the podcast very often, his name is Brian. He was actually in the comments earlier. As I think he has no previous experience with CrossFit, he just found the podcast. I think he does some sports stuff and a lot of like other different stuff, but I believe he doesn't do CrossFit, which is kind of like I feel like everybody that listens to this is somebody that they found me
In the
because of in the
CrossFit sphere
CrossFit.
a little
Yeah,
bit, yeah.
so it's cool to have already people from like lower places, and hopefully, like who knows, hopefully in the future I want to expand to the point that I'm doing, I don't know, trial photographers or
Yeah.
different, just expand a little more because there's only so many people that shoot CrossFit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's super exciting. And talking about content creators and HWPO, it's you guys are growing fast, and you have already two of the best content creators. Are you planning, like, what's in the future when it comes to content creators? Are you planning on like expanding to like having different?
Are you asking for a job live? Guys,
Well,
what
I'm
do you
just
think?
asking.
Should we hire him?
I'm asking
I'm just kidding.
because I mean, you never know. Some people
You
might
never
be
know.
listening.
Yeah.
They might be like at that point of their life that they're like, I want to do something new. I want to find a place that it can be family. So, it could be like something somebody's watching. They're like, okay, so
Yeah.
this seems like a good place. So, what are your plans?
Yeah, I mean, it is super cool to see how much we are growing. I mean, it's like we've been doing programming for a year,
Yeah.
and then we're now a month and a couple days into launching our own training app, and there's so much that we can do with that. It's at the point where like there's so much we could be doing, and obviously our team is just moving as quickly as we
Yeah.
can. I don't think we're not there yet.
Mhm.
Like I would love to hire more people, but we're just like so close. But I mean that I feel like we are close to bringing more
Yeah.
people on, and I think that that's such a good place to be. Like I want our team to be scrappy, and we are a startup company, and we are like I think that there's also value in that. Like there's value in rather than just like, oh, let's just bring on another person to ease the load. It's like, well, why don't we just like roll up our sleeves a little bit and like really feel the grind and feel the hard work. Because I think that just like builds character too.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, like, yes, we're hoping to get to a place where we've got an entire dedicated content team, because at the end of the day, that's like, we all know content is king and people are constantly looking to consume, and I think that that's really what sets us apart, is that we do provide such quality content for all of our members. And yeah, so if anybody's out there, we're always looking.
We have another question by Enrique. He says, hello, what's your creative process to develop a recipe and then for the content you create with that recipe? Sorry if you already talked about it. I just got here. So we kind of did
We
talk
touched
about
a little. I'll skip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah. So the creative process for me, a lot of it is like when I'm just looking at a blank page and thinking, okay, what do I want to? When I was starting to write the cookbook, I would write just like ideas. So I would take like chicken and say, all right, how have I eaten chicken before and what did I like about it? And okay, chicken thighs, love chicken thighs. And then I would be like, oh, chicken and blue cheese, really good. Okay, chicken, what goes good with chicken and blue cheese? Chicken, blue cheese, and like prosciutto and apples. And that's
so
just
cool.
like literally
just
how it
ideas
would
popping
start.
in your head.
Yeah, or we travel so much, which is awesome, and you go and you have a burger with like peanut butter and raspberry jam and bacon and jalapenos, and you're like, what? There's no way. And you eat it and you're like, there's something about this that just works. And so I used to carry a notebook with me, and I'd be like, I have to, or like take pictures of menus, because I just, some people are so creative with flavors, and then you can kind of take that and you're like, okay, cool, maybe I'll do like a steak with bacon and some sort of like jam sauce or whatever. So I think, well, we're not out of time.
Yeah,
don't worry.
That's super interesting
Yeah.
because it's just ideas popping out of your head, and traveling so much, it gives you a taste of different cultures too.
Mhm.
So that's really cool, and you're applying it into the kitchen. We have Anthony Tom.
Oh, hi.
He says Sammy throws down the best chicken salad sandwiches.
Oh yeah,
Miss you guys.
Famous. Oh my gosh, what a sweetheart.
Great guy. I think I'm gonna have Anthony very soon in the
Oh, you should.
podcast for sure. Yeah, he's one of my best friends in the content creation industry. So
he's good people.
Definitely. He's just so busy lately. Every time I'm talking to him, I'm like, hey, when are we gonna do this episode?
You know what? He's so busy, but he's tuned in.
He's tuned in, yeah. He's definitely watching.
That's a true homie.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a question. I kind of forgot about it before. started talking about Enrique. What were
We
we
were
talking right before
we were
that?
talking about building or the HMPO team
Okay.
growing.
Yes, I love all like the success stories of like things that just started for fun because Matt, whenever he was started like CrossFit, right? He just was training and somebody's like, dude, you're really good at what you're doing. And that wasn't too long ago to put into perspective, right? That was maybe what, 7 years ago when he 8
Eight, maybe 2012, 13, maybe 9 years. I think
9
at
years
this
ago,
point,
yeah.
yeah.
And it started as him just working out at the gym, and somebody like saw like he was really good at what he did,
Mhm.
and then to the point that 8 years later, that it's not a lot of time. We're talking about somebody that was able to accomplish so many things,
Yeah,
and same thing with feeding the Frasers. That was
2017.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's something that just started for fun and it just grows to the point that you have a book,
Yeah.
HWPO, we're talking about that too. It's something that started not that long ago and it's growing to the point that you have 2 content creators, 7 employees and all that. So all those stories, I love it because I feel like a lot of people can feel like, connected with that because a lot of people are probably starting a business right now. It can be whatever. Alex was telling me yesterday about the athletic brewing,
Yeah.
and he was telling me that they're like extremely successful. We went to a restaurant yesterday, and Alex asked, "Do you guys have athletic brewing?" In my mind, I'm like,
There's
"No." And the guy is like, "Yeah, we have this." He mentioned like 8 different flavors. I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?"
We went and
That's
toured their
amazing.
facility. I mean, they're
Yeah.
only 5 years old as a business.
That's what he was telling me, and they just started kind of like just as local,
Yeah.
and it got to the point that right now they're super successful. So
It's cool because I feel like, when I started feeding the Frasers, my one thing and something that I'm so grateful, like Matt reminded me of this all the time. When you start something because it's fun.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, like you get some success in it, and now all of a sudden there's expectation and there's pressure and regardless of like likely nobody is putting this pressure on you, right? Like you're putting it on yourself. You're trying to, meet whatever level of expectation that you've set for yourself. And so it becomes stressful and then not as fun and then not as successful.
Yeah.
Whereas Matt always reminded me of my own, like, listen, I started this because it was fun.
Mhm.
And the way that I originally shot with the stool and my feet or whatever, like people would comment all the time. It'd be really nice if we could see like the food. Because it was far away and I totally got that.
Mhm.
But I was like, hey, not for nothing, like this is just fun for me. Like
Correct.
I'm not trying to cure, and even still to this day, people ask all the time, hey, it'd be really cool if you could make more of these kinds of recipes. And then my response is always just like, this is simply just a page of what I'm cooking for my family. Like I'm not curating content for anyone other than me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing what I think is cool. And I love that people are showing up for that. And I'm so honored. But also at the end of the day, if I'm not serving myself in this, then nobody's winning, right? Because then I'm not doing it. I'm not having fun anymore. And so I think that's not everything can be fun, right? There are times where you just gotta like put your nose down and work. But I think that especially in the creative space, it's kind of like you started something because it was just fun.
Yeah.
And then you got into it, and the more it becomes work, you can't forget that you started it because it's fun.
And it happens to me so often, especially lately, that I've been more busy and sometimes I can feel like I wouldn't say burnout, but very close to like burning out because I feel just like a little stressed, a little anxious, editing and all that. And that's when I go back and I'm like, so this is something that you start for fun, complete for fun, and you loved it. You love just to go to the gym, take some pictures of members, and seeing them smile after you send them the pictures. So whenever I start feeling to the point that I'm about to burn out, I try to go back and like think, what led you to this point? It wasn't. I never thought I was gonna be a full-time photographer or videographer, right? So I tried to think, what were the things that made me love what I do?
Yeah.
And I tried to go back and that's what I do. Like I remember just taking pictures of my dogs. That's something that I loved. I'll be like, go to the park and take some pictures of them, and then I'll look at the pictures or go to my home gym. Shout out Mako Athletics. and just take some pictures
Yeah.
of members, and it's awesome to see their reaction. And I never did that because I wanted money of the members. It was just fun,
Right.
and I love the reactions. So
I think too, as a content creator, there's a lot of pressure to constantly create content.
yeah,
And sometimes it's fun to just like do the thing to do it, right? To like remind yourself that you just do it because you love it and all that stuff. So, recently we've been super busy. I haven't been very active on feeding the Frasers, and like, there was a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago, sorry, where I was just like, you know what I want to do today? I was feeling this pressure of like, oh, I haven't posted anything, I haven't made a recipe in a really long time. And I was like, I have a free day. All I want to do is like cook and bake. But I don't want the pressure of like, oh, I should be capturing this. I should put some stories together. I should. And I'm like, no, you know what? I'm gonna just put my phone over there, not even take my camera out. Like, I started this because I loved cooking and I wanted to learn how to cook. So I was just like, I'm just gonna spend the whole day just cooking. And I had invited some friends over, saying, I told them all, I'm cooking all day long. Please come over and help me eat this food. And it was just like the best day. And
It's
that
so
was
great.
what it was, right? Like that's
Yeah.
originally what it started out as. So sometimes it's good to just like, just go and like take photos of your friends
Absolutely.
because you love your friends and it's just something that you have fun with rather than like, I gotta meet this deadline. And sometimes you gotta just like do the thing.
And now thinking about it, that's another reason why I started the podcast, is because of feeling like that feeling of like burnout, almost like I needed to try something
But you're
new.
burnt out, but you're adding more to your plate.
Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
know.
it's just, you need
That's
a
how
little,
it works.
recharge.
I remember just being super busy. One of my friends, CJ, he when I announced the podcast, he's like, "What are you doing? Like we were just talking that like how do you even find time?"
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm gonna do it. I just woke up one day and I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And I think I released the first episode a couple of days after. It was like something that it just kind of like I had to do it. And I'm glad I did. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm meeting people like people I already knew, but just getting to know more about them and learning. Like I feel like just the conversation we're having, I'm learning about things that I wouldn't have learned with somebody else. I was more in the like just taking photos in CrossFit, just the way that like the ideas pop out in your head for cooking and the way you're planning. And I think it's great, and I think it's helping me as well. Hopefully, helping other people.
We should share the link to the Ira Glass thing.
Yes,
I think that
it's great.
Or like put it up on your Instagram or something.
I'm gonna put it in the description on YouTube, and I'm gonna also put it on Instagram. But definitely, you gotta.
I listen to it like every other day.
So let's do one more question. We're already 1 hour and 2 minutes.
Stop it! Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
So Brian says, I love cooking as well. I also can't duplicate a meal. What's your favorite cuisine to cook, or I guess favorite culture?
I don't do like a lot of like culturally specific stuff, but I would say the cookbook has a handful of Portuguese inspired recipes. So I'm Portuguese, and so there's a few in there that like just remind me of my childhood.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been super special. I've actually, funny enough, like wrote the cookbook, cooked it like all year in 2020, and then all last year I like didn't. We were going through the editing phase, right? And I like didn't cook any. I was like, I need a break from these recipes. Yeah. And then now that the book is out, I've been going back through and cooking a lot of them, and it's been fun. And those are the ones that I'm leaning towards, are like those comfort, like Portuguese inspired dishes. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm originally from Venezuela, and that's by far my favorite. Like, it just reminds me of like my childhood. And if I feel like if I was a chef, I'll be like that too, leaning more towards like Venezuelan and Cuban food. I absolutely love it. That's one of the reasons why I like visiting Miami too, because they have, in my mind, the best like food, because it's like a combination of many cultures that I'm really into food. Sammy, it's been 1 hour and 4 minutes, which is crazy because I feel like it went by super fast. Yeah, and I tell all my guests, I'm like, I'm gonna cut out 1 hour, because if we talk for 2 hours, we probably won't have much things to say in a future episode.
There we go. We gotta leave you hanging a little bit. Yeah.
So thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, we are at your house.
This is super cool. I'm so glad we did this.
Thanks so much for inviting me, and it's been great, and I hope a lot of people get
next time we'll do it in the kitchen.
There you go. And so that's funny you say that, because somebody just said, this episode should have been hosted in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So
You
that's,
were just bending to the fact that I'm like, I gotta get a workout in before we do this. So it was just, finished and we did it right here. So thank you guys.
yeah. The episode is gonna be on Spotify. I usually do it the day after. I don't know if I'm gonna have time tomorrow because I'm traveling back to Pensacola, but it'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts soon.
Amazing.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Sammy.
you.
It's been
Appreciate
great.
it.
And before we end it, what's next for Sammy?
What's next for Sammy? Oh, well, we're just gonna keep grinding and keep growing our team.
Grinding.
Yeah, we've got. Honestly, we have so many things that are like we want to do. I feel like there's just not enough hours in the day. So, we're plugging away at growing HWPO training in our community of hard workers, and maybe maybe in a couple months we'll be talking about my second cookbook. And
there you go.
Yeah, we'll carve out some time for that. So yeah.
Great. I love everything you do,
Thank you.
and I'm glad we made this happen.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. So that's it. Hope to have you soon in the future.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys.
Bye guys.
Let me pause it there.
Thank you. That was so fun.